Hello, I'm Dick Balzano, Deputy Maritime Administrator, and welcome to the U.S. Department of Transportation and the Maritime Administration's Maritime Day program. We had planned a nice event to be held on our RF ships in Baltimore this year. However, the COVID-19 pandemic had forced us to change our plans. And much like our maritime industry, we cannot and have not stopped, and found a way to celebrate Maritime Day online with you. On Maritime Day, we honor America's maritime heritage and show respect for the men and women who make it great. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Maritime Administrator Mark Busby, who will welcome Secretary Elaine Chao. Admiral Busby is a proud graduate of the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy and accepted a commission in the U.S. Navy, where he commanded destroyer USS Kearney, destroyer Squadron 31, Surface Warfare Officer School, Joint Task Force Guantanamo Bay, and was the 25th commander of the U.S. Navy's Military Sealift Command. He retired from the Navy in 2013 with over 34 years of service. Following his retirement from the Navy, Admiral Busby spent 4 years as president of the National Defense Transportation Association. He was then appointed by President Trump and sworn in as Maritime Administrator on August 8, 2017. Please join me in welcoming our Maritime Administrator, Rear Admiral Mark Busby.
Thank you, Dick. It's great to be with you all today, if only virtually, but Maritime Day must go on. It is now my honor to introduce U.S. Secretary of Transportation Elaine L. Chao. Before leading the Department of Transportation, Secretary Chao served as U.S. Secretary of Labor, the first Asian American woman in American history to be appointed to the President's Cabinet. Secretary Chao began her executive career in public service working on transportation issues at the White House. She then served as Deputy Maritime Administrator, Chairman of the Federal Maritime Commission, and Deputy Secretary of Transportation. In addition, she has served as President and CEO of the United Way of America and Director of the Peace Corps. Secretary Chao's #1 priority is safety. It is the foundation of everything the department does. Secretary Chao is also a strong advocate for the importance of the maritime industry to our nation's economic growth and to our national security. Madam Secretary, welcome aboard.
National Maritime Day was established by Congress in 1933 to commemorate the first transoceanic voyage of the American steamship Savannah. It was a way to celebrate America's long and deep maritime tradition and the innovation that has powered it from Fulton steamship to nuclear ships and beyond. In World War II, merchant mariners were an essential part of the war effort, and their casualty rate exceeded that of all the other armed forces. Today, we salute the men and women of the American maritime community who have helped ensure that people, supplies, and equipment get to where they need to be during times of peace, war, and natural disasters. Our U.S. flag fleet is an integral part of our national security. And as we face the COVID-19 crisis of today, the department is doing everything we can to support our country's maritime sector and ensure that the industry is able to ramp up when the economic recovery begins. As we celebrate National Maritime Day this year, we want to thank our country's merchant mariners and all those who work in the maritime sector for your contribution and service to our country. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Secretary. While you were speaking, I have repositioned down here to Newport News. I'm aboard one of our Ready Reserve Force vessels, the Cornhusker State. Thank you very, very much for all your leadership. I know I speak for all of us in MARAD and all of us in the industry when we say how much we appreciate your strong leadership at this time of crisis in our nation. And you've really been a strong hand on the wheel to lead us through all this in the transportation industry. So thank you very much, ma'am, for joining us today. You know, our motto in the Merchant Marine is in peace and war. It's on our Merchant Marine flag. We talk about it in speeches all the time. It's been a part of our industry since before this nation was even a nation. It's what drives all of us who have served at sea and those of us who support those who go to sea, and the idea of we're going to get it through no matter what, whether it's peacetime, wartime, no matter what, we're going to get it through. And certainly throughout our nation's history, as I said before we were even a nation, this industry has persevered through a Revolutionary War, through a Civil War, through two global conflicts, 2 world wars, and any number of regional conflicts. Merchant Marine has always been there and has never faltered. And now here we are, facing a new foe, another global sort of conflict. This time, instead of man versus man, it's man versus a virus. And yet here we are, Merchant Marine still persevering through it all. Back during World War II, in order for our ships to get through, facing the threat of U-boats and kamikazes out in the Pacific, we had to come up with countermeasures. We had to come up with ways to reduce that risk and get the ships through and get the mission taken care of. So we developed convoys and put guns on ships and had air cover and built the ship's destroyer escort specifically to fight the U-boats. And we got through. We made the difference. We got the ships through. And Congress just approved recently the Congressional Gold Medal to award all of those Merchant Marine veterans of World War II who very deservedly persevered in wartime to make sure that the Allies had victory in Europe and in the Pacific. Well, today, you mariners are facing the same very, very grave challenges. And we have to do the very, very same thing. We have to come up with countermeasures and things that are going to mitigate that risk and keep our ships sailing. And you're doing that, whether it's through personal protective equipment, social distancing, contact tracking, deep cleaning of our vessels. You're making it happen, and you're still getting our ships through. And I think that's a real tribute as much to you in this generation as it was to those who preceded you and other generations who did what you had to do to get those ships through. And I think it's something that you all should be very, very proud of going forward. It's now incumbent upon us to see this thing through, to push through. We're making great strides. We're making great progress. And I'm very, very proud of the conduct of all of you, whether it's been labor, whether it's been ship owners and operators, or whether it's been government entities. The level of cooperation that has been exhibited, I think, says so much about this industry and why we are so strong and why we have been able to persevere through all these years. So going forward, the days are going to be long. We haven't kicked this thing yet. We're making great strides, made progress, but it's going to be with us for quite a while. So it's going to take that same drive, that same perseverance to win through this thing ultimately as well. And I know that you absolutely will. And I think that in the coming months, when we do get this thing behind us, every one of us that had to watch during this time should take a great deal of pride in the fact that when it was our time, when our nation called upon us, when the challenges were issued, that we all stood tall, did what we had to do, and made it happen in peace and war. So thank you all very much for what you do. God bless, and sail safe. Carry on.
Thank you, Administrator Busby. It is now my pleasure to ask General Stephen Lyons, Commander, United States Transportation Command, to offer his thoughts on Maritime Day. General Lyons was confirmed on July 31st, 2018, to be the 13th Commander of U.S. Transportation Command, one of the 10 combatant commands in the Department of Defense. His experience spans 35 years of military service in positions of progressing leadership and responsibility. Welcome, General Lyons.
It's a pleasure to be able to join Administrator Busby and the Department of Transportation leadership to celebrate this year's National Maritime Day. I regret that COVID-19 pandemic prevents us from a traditional gathering to see old friends. As this audience knows, TRANSCOM, one of 11 combatant commands, is responsible to the Secretary of Defense and the Commander-in-Chief to deploy and sustain military forces around the globe to support our national security interests. In doing so, we count on a strong U.S. flag maritime industry, a maritime industry that has a long history of enabling military victory. Today, just as in World War II, the United States flag merchant ships, the mariners who crew them, and our commercial sealift industry continue to play a critical role in our nation's defense by providing sealift ships, mariners, and access to global seaport networks. As a result, the United States' ability to project and sustain military power across transoceanic distances remains a strategic comparative advantage and is admired by both friends and adversaries. TRANSCOM, working with MARAD and key industry partners, provides an essential element of deterrence and, if necessary, the unquestionable ability to respond with overwhelming decisive force, most of which will be moved by sealift. The result, combined effort, is a world order that encourages peace and opportunities for freedom while deterring great power war for over 75 years and counting. So let me say that at TRANSCOM, we are proud of our relationship with the Department of Transportation, the commercial sealift industry, and the United States merchant marine professionals. The United States is today, and always will be, a maritime nation. The most important resource of a maritime nation is people, professional men and women of high technical proficiency who sail with high technical competency, hard work, and innovation. That is why, at the end of the day, it is a U.S. flag on a ship with U.S. crews at the helm that remain essential to our national defense. So it is with great pride and appreciation that I join the United States of America in honoring National Maritime Day. We are counting on you. Together, we deliver.
Thank you, General Lyons. Our next speaker joined the Merchant Marine during World War II at the ripe old age of 14. Mr. David Yoho sailed on a fleet oiler, which refueled other ships at sea in the Pacific Theater. He was part of the U.S. Merchant Marine that supplied U.S. forces with everything necessary to win the war. Welcome, and we are honored to have you, Mr. Yoho.
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you to all of you who made this night possible. And I look at you in reverence through the camera and say, thank you, thank you, thank you on behalf of the American Merchant Marine veteran of World War II. I represent those who are still living, less than 2,000 of us, and those who have passed the bar, who are no longer with us, but have families that mourn their going. It's been a long journey for us. See, in 1936, President Roosevelt created something called the Merchant Marine Act. And in that act, he created Kings Point, the academy, officer training. He created 3 bases for basic training for enlisted men. One in California, one in Florida, and one not too far from here in Sheepshead Bend, New York. He created a place for radio officers, radio users to be trained, Hoffman Island, New York. They recruited in all 250,000 men, if I can liberally call 16, 18, 19-year-old people men. And these were all volunteers who came to this chance, not to look for a career, not to look for a job, but they came in patriotism to serve this country. 250,000, there are less than 2,000 of us left today. Now, we had in this country unbelievable industrial production. The ability to deliver came to us, and we did it. We did it at many risks. 3 days after Japan attacked us, the Germans declared war on us and already had their submarines called the Wolfpack stationed off our east coast. And as ships left to either go to Europe or come down to South America and elsewhere, those ships were attacked. And in the first 7 months of that war, we lost 300 ships, half of them U.S., because we hadn't blacked out the areas, we hadn't caused the cities to be blacked out, and the Germans could sit out there and just watch our silhouettes and pick us off. When we came home, what had we done? 1 out of 26 died. We died. 663 held as prisoner of war. And when they went in there, the pay stopped. When their ship was sunk or they got off the ship, the pay stopped. And they were excluded from the GI Bill in many ways. He even had to pay taxes on all of our income while the American military got a $1,500 exemption. And going back to a time where $2,500 a year was common in earnings, we paid taxes on everything we earned. We come home scarred, sometimes physically, often mentally. We came home with malaria. We came home with ulcers. We came home with asbestosis, which is a disease of the plating of the lungs with asbestos fibers that you get from serving in the engine rooms, which had pipes which were coated with asbestos for insulation. And we came home, many of us, with that unnamed disease, now called post-traumatic stress disorder, and disorder it was. But we delivered. We delivered 15 tons, 100 million, I beg your pardon, let me recite it again, 15 million tons of goods to the UK and Europe. Another 13 million tons to the Pacific, 8 million to the Mediterranean, and 5 million tons to Russia. Plus, we delivered 7 million military personnel and brought them home again to the end of the war. Now, you're going to give us the Congressional Medal for that. We say thank you. In Obesius, we tell you how much we appreciate it because we were left out of the GI Bill, but then they gave it to us in 1988. 1988, 43 years after the war ended, they gave us the GI Bill. La-di-da. I was over 60 years of age, and most of us didn't have to go back to college, buy our first house, or have medical coverage anymore. But I want to take you to a spot that you may not have heard about in remembrance of us and remembrance of those who served there. I'm going to take you December 2nd, 1943, to Bari, Italy, on the Adriatic, small seaport town, 200,000 people, 30 ships in the harbor. 17 of them will eventually be sunk on that day, 8 burned beyond commission because those ships were clustered there and the Germans decided to attack. They sent over 105 junkers who attacked, and one of the ships in the cluster was the SS John Harvey. And that ship had in its bows, in its cargo holds, 100 tons of mustard gas bombs. You can look it up. You'll find the information about it today. It was held from the public until long after the war. 100 tons. And while that crew bravely fought the fire on that ship hit the cargo area, and that ship exploded. No, it disintegrated. And every living person on that ship and the adjoining ships had their lives taken from us. And then a cloud of smoke arises and covers the harbor with mustard gas. Clouds of fog beyond it, inhaled by many. 1,000 military and merchant marines died in that attack. 1,000 civilians died in that effect. And then he went on with a lifetime of terror because of mustard gas poisoning. Now, June 1942, and this is my last example for you. I want you to remember this because this is important to us. Murmansk Run. The convoys were numbered. This was PQ-17, scheduled to leave on June 1942. Into Murmansk, Russia, which is on the Barents Sea. On one side is the Scandinavian Peninsula, the other side is Russia. Temperatures in the water, 45 degrees below zero. You fall into that water, your ship gets sunk, and you're trying to get rescued, you can make it for 3 to 4 minutes before hypothermia takes you. Horrible ice caps, horrible storms that hit the area, and that crew went through that. 35 ships, 24 military, and 5 days from their destination, Admiral Lord Pound, British Admiralty, who was entrusted with taking charge of that area, pulled away the 24 combat ships, pulled them away, and sent them elsewhere because the mighty German battleship, the Tirpitz, was harbored there, and they thought that was going to come out of Norway and attack us, so they sent away the support. And of those 35 ships, 11, remember the number, 11 made it, and the rest didn't. And this is why you give us this honor, and this is why we get this medal, and this is why I say, biased as I may be, we deserved it. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you again, and when you leave this gracious presentation today, I wish it was in person, that I could touch your hand, shake your hand, and say thank you. Instead, I say to you, when you're with others, tell them about us and say, we gave up our yesterdays for their tomorrows. God bless the United States Merchant Marine. God bless the United States of America. And thank you again.
I turned up because, well, there was a war. I wanted to do something for my country. Well, it wasn't no picnic. There was a war going on. Rockets were going over, missiles. That's, just a war. Well, it was scary. I was going through the English Channel and seeing those mines and just hoping none would break loose. And we were just hoping we didn't get hit by any of those missiles and rockets going over. Well, if there was another war, I would do it again. But I'm a little too old now. But I would serve my country again if I had to.
I joined the Merchant Marine and was sent on my first train ride down to Long Beach to take a ferry out to Catalina Island, which was the boot camp in that area for new merchant mariners. I was sent out to Oakland Harbor and was put aboard the SS Flyaway, which was a C2 freighter. And at this point, we were in a convoy. So from that point on, we were in a convoy. I want to really commend the captain on that ship because he knew we were going to be in Guam on Thanksgiving. And so he had extra turkeys, cranberries, sweet potatoes, pumpkins, that put on board. And on Thanksgiving Day, the U.S. soldiers that were stevedores for our ship unloading it were treated to a first-class, old-fashioned Thanksgiving dinner.
So she enrolled me in 1943 in Sheepshead Bay, Maritime Service Training Station, got my basic training there. 3 months later, I was in a 100-ship convoy bound for the UK. My section of the convoy, about 36 ships, pulled off and made the first all-American convoy through the Mediterranean of World War II. We carried cargo. I made about 5 round trips during the war, all on different Liberty ships. In our trip through the Mediterranean, we were attacked by the German Luftwaffe off Crete. We were strafed and shelled. The return trip from Murmansk in the Arctic Ocean, we were again not only attacked heavily by the Germans, but we had ungodly weather, 125-mile-an-hour winds, 100-foot seas, and we managed to survive that after 3 or 4 days. America's well worth fighting for. And occasionally, one has to do this.
Thank you to Secretary Chao, to General Lyons, to Mr. David Yoho, and everyone who has joined us online for Maritime Day. As is our tradition, we'll join together in singing the Heave Ho. And we have a special guest this year to lead us. You probably know him best from his long-running series, Dirty Jobs. He's the narrator of Discovery Channel's series, The Deadliest Catch. He's also the host of his own podcast, The Way I Heard It, and the Facebook series, Returning the Favor. He also runs the Mike Rowe Works Foundation, which awards scholarships to students pursuing a career in the skilled trades. Take it away, Mike Rowe.
Well, hey there. It's me, Mike Rowe, Dirty Jobs, Deadliest Catch, and so forth. Talking to you today a little north of San Francisco, where I am hunkered in my bunker, bringing you virtual tidings of sincere thanks and appreciation on National Maritime Day. Why? Why me? What am I doing here? I'm not sure. To be honest with you, I got an email months ago from a Rear Admiral named Mark Busby inviting me to Baltimore, where I assume this event was originally scheduled so I could speak to you in person. I was delighted to accept. Baltimore's my hometown, and I never get email from admirals or rear admirals, so I was excited. But I checked the schedule. No go. Whole month was a mess. I couldn't move anything, and it didn't seem likely that you guys would reschedule National Maritime Day. So I had to pass. But then, coronavirus. Now, schedule is wide open. So it's a very simple thing for me to sit here in the comfort of my office and say a few words about how grateful I truly am for and to the Merchant Marine. I had an uncle, a guy named Joe Hergenrother, who was a Merchant Marine, and some of my earliest memories as a kid were sitting at his feet with my brothers, listening to his endless stories and tales and adventures and misadventures of his time in uniform. I grew up very aware, for that reason, that the Merchant Marine was a thing. And the older I got, the more surprised I was to learn how few Americans shared that basic awareness. You guys need better PR. And I say that with great respect to who's ever in charge of PR. It's just that back in the Second World War, from what I've read and from what my Uncle Joe told me, the Merchant Marine was the toast of the town. Well, they should be the toast of the town today. I was heartened by Congress passing a law that the president put to them, affording every surviving World War II Merchant Marine veteran a congressional gold medal. I thought that was extraordinary and long overdue. And I was really impressed. The Admiral mentioned in his email that since the coronavirus took hold, you guys haven't stopped doing what you do, but incredibly, there have been no outbreaks on any U.S. flagship. That's amazing, and further testament to your dedication, your service, your skill, your diligence, all of that stuff. So I'm sitting here thinking of all you've done, trying to find the right words to express my sincere thanks. And it is a challenge, but what about this? Heave ho, my lads, heave ho, it's a long, long way to go. It's a long, long pull with our hatches full, braving the wind, braving the sea, fighting a treacherous foe. Heave ho, my lads, heave ho, let the sea roll high or low. We can cross any ocean, sail any river, give us the goods and we'll deliver. Damn the submarine, we're America's merchant marine. Please, thank you. Take your seats. I can't hear you. But you can hear me, I hope, anyway. And I hope you'll accept my sincere thanks for all you've done, for all you are doing, and all you will continue to do. That song, by the way, also the most underrated military song. Am I right? Admiral Busby, something has to be done. I can help. Call me. Thank you. Stay safe.
Thank you, Mike. And thank you to Secretary Chao, Admiral Busby, General Lyons, Mr. Yoho, and everyone viewing at home today. This concludes our program. Thank you for joining us.